people in this room that, but it is a school night. With the 10-year-old at home, I got to get home and make sure she's in bed and ready for tomorrow. Well, good evening and welcome to the South Carolina Superintendent of Education Republican Candidate Forum. I'm Lucas McFadden. I'll be the moderator tonight. I work for CN2 News. I'm the anchor and producer for our news program that is based here in the Tri-County area. We consider it York, Lancaster, and Chester counties. We're part of the Charlotte market. Those candidates might be familiar with that market because you have to buy a lot of hats in Charlotte. But we are very proud that there's a state line because we are very happy to be in South Carolina, and our news stations really focus on that. Well, flattery will get you everything, so thank you so much for that. I also co-host a morning show with Patty Mercer on WRHI's Palmetto Mornings, and that's weekdays, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. You can also stream it live, and we focus strictly again on 3 counties. We appreciate so much the candidates, one, for running. Whether or not everyone in this room believes in everything that they say and rallying behind them, you candidates believe in a cause, and you are stepping up to serve the families of South Carolina, and by that we say thank you so much. We appreciate it. And thank you for showing up and not taking all the information you hear from a best friend, neighbor on social media and claim that's the gospel. We always say in our line of work, and I work in an industry where we have sound bites, it's important to hear directly from the candidate themselves. So we certainly appreciate you all for showing up and being engaged in this process. Thank you so much. We're going to begin tonight with prayer. Dr. Mark Herring will lead us in prayer tonight.
Let us pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father and Sovereign Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to be here and to participate in this very important forum. We thank you so much for the men and women who have given their time and their talent to do this, and we pray, Heavenly Father, that you would bless them and care for them. We also pray for our country, and we ask, Heavenly Father, that you would continue to watch over it and that you would help us through these difficult times. We pray also for the people of Ukraine, and we ask, Heavenly Father, that you would help us as a country to become more God-fearing and God-loving. We know, Father, we are surrounded by people that who cease to believe in God, then do not believe in nothing. They believe in anything. And we pray, Heavenly Father, that we would be strong in our faith and be able to lead by our lights. And now bless the God of all things, the doer of great deeds everywhere, who exalted our days from the womb and acts mercifully toward us. Grant us cheerful hearts and peace in our time, and in Israel forever and ever. May your mercy be always with us and redeem us in your own time. Amen.
Amen. And please welcome Garrett Jackson, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. He is representing the College Republicans here on the campus of Winthrop University.
Who am I saying for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to remind everyone about the restrooms. If you go up these stairs and to the left and down the hallway, you will find them. If you do not see them, ask someone. They will point you in the right direction. We certainly appreciate the Reaganites of York County and the Winthrop University College of Republicans for sponsoring today's forum. Thank you so much. You will hear from the 6 candidates, again, running for South Carolina Superintendent of Education on the Republican ticket in a quick second. But I want to kind of go through briefly some of the rules for tonight, and many of these candidates have heard it, but just in case they have not, we will make sure that everyone in the audience hears it as well. Each candidate will get 4 minutes to use for opening statements. They're going to each get to answer 2 specific candidate questions for 4 minutes each, and then closing statements for 2 minutes each. Matt Hires right here is our timekeeper. He will have a 1-minute sign that's written right here that he will show. You will also have 30 seconds with the yellow card. And then 15 seconds to safely land the plane with the red card. Matt, when South Carolina's very own Ben and White retires, I would advise you to fill out an application to have that. All right, I think that is pretty much everything. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. This microphone does turn off of this, if I'm not mistaken. Candidates, I'll leave it up to you. You can keep it here and move it around along those lines. All right? So we will begin now with opening statements. Again, the time will start when you start talking. And here's the order that will go first. The first candidate is Linda Leventis Webbs.
Thank you, Lucas. It's so great to be here tonight. I want to thank you all for coming out. My name is Linda Leventis Wells. I have over 35 years of teaching and law enforcement experience. I have my undergraduate degree from the University of South Carolina in health and physical education. I have my master's degree in guidance and educational psychology from the University of Mississippi and Ole Miss. And I just want you to know, I love children. I have 2 little grandbaby, little girls, 2 and 1, and another one on the way. So my daughter will have 3 under 3. So it's very important that we establish and we keep our education moving forward, and that we make sure nothing interrupts or comes into the picture where it is going to prevent our children from receiving not an adequate education, but the best education they so deserve. I tell you this because I have a law enforcement background as well, and someone said, Linda, all you have is law enforcement? No, I have them both. I was an investigator for the Richland County Sheriff's Department, and I handled sexual assault, child abuse, child molesting cases. And I ended up teaching at the police academy. My husband took a job in Saudi Arabia, and he married for better or for worse. That's the worst he's ever done to me. And I want you to know, once my luggage went to Germany and stayed for a couple of days, it arrived in Riyadh, and I went and applied for a job at the international school. Now, mine is over 100 degrees outside. Women can't drive, and my husband was out in the car. He was there for 5 hours in the car, and when I walked out, you could see steam coming from his head. And he goes, do you know how many hours you've been? I said, I start work in the morning. He goes, I can live with this. So it worked out because we stayed almost 3 years. Came back to Greenville, South Carolina, where I taught at J.O. Mann High School. I was a guidance counselor in the morning and a PE teacher in the afternoon. I coached girls varsity basketball and girls varsity soccer for 6 years. I love working with students, and I'm all about women playing women's sports. I am not for CRT or any strands of it, because I am not for anything that divides us. We need to be united. I am for safe schools. About a month and a half ago, we had an incident that occurred in Greenville in our middle school. There was an active shooter. The school went in lockdown. The teachers knew exactly what to do. They followed protocol. They were heroic in securing our students into the classroom. There was a fatality. Law enforcement responded within minutes, maybe 1 minute. We had 80 units there. And that's because not only we had an SRO in the school, but we had everyone involved because they know the importance of our children's safety. And the little fella in middle school was apprehended, and now he's just in, he doesn't realize what he's done, and it's because they watch these videos and they see this person get shot, and then 2 weeks later they see him in a new video. This has got to stop, and we need our students back in the classroom and learning in person. Thank you. Linda Leventis.
Thank you so much, Linda. Kathy Manus is up next.
Thank you, Lucas. Well, hello, everyone. I am so glad to see you. I am Kathy Manus. But before I get started telling about myself, I'd like to introduce a very special person here today. Amy Medina. Did I get it right? Was I close? Stand up. I want everybody to see you. I don't want to embarrass you, but I want everybody to see you. Y'all, this is Rock Hill. She's a teacher at Northwestern High School and Rock Hill School District Teacher of the Year. And she represented you so well last week at the Teacher of the Year Gala. So y'all should be very proud of her because I am. And thank you for being here. We were going back to the bus and I said, oh, I want to be in Rock Hill. So thank you for being here. Well, I am Kathy Manus and I'm running for State Superintendent of Education. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Lancaster. So I grew up in Lancaster. I graduated from Lancaster High School. I then went to the University of South Carolina. I had got my undergrad in elementary education, and I earned my master's in early childhood education. And while I was teaching third grade at Irwin Elementary, I came to Winthrop. I would teach all day, and on Thursday nights, I would come here and take the classes needed so that I could be certified in education administration. But I will tell you, this place has grown since I came here on Thursday nights. But I'm glad to share that with you. Also, I am the Executive Director of Common State Teachers Association, and let me tell you about Common State Teachers. And I just had one of your retired teachers say, I was a member of Common State Teachers Association when I was teaching. We were formed so teachers could belong to a professional association without being affiliated with a union. There were teachers in South Carolina that did not have the beliefs of the NEA, and so we were formed to give those teachers a choice. And I'm so happy to say that we are the largest professional association in South Carolina for teachers. I live in Lexington now, and I'm a member of Lexington Town Council. I've been on Town Council for 17 years. And if anybody knows anything about Lexington, you know we are a very conservative town. All 7 of our members are Republicans. I've been unopposed except for the last time I had somebody run against me and I beat him like a drum, so I hope he won't do that anymore. Last year, I had the honor and the pleasure of serving as the president of the National League of Cities. I was the first person ever from South Carolina to be the president of the National League of Cities. And that was important because I was able to bring conservative ideas, make sure our nominating committee had Republicans on there so that people coming up will be Republicans, leaders of the National League of Cities. But when I'm your state superintendent of education, I want children graduating from our schools to be ready for the 3 E's: employment, enlistment, or enrollment. If they're graduating from Northwestern or Rock Hill or South Point and they're coming to Winthrop, they need to have the skills ready to succeed that first year. If they're going to work with you, then they need to have the skills to be able to take a job. We got to do a better job with our career and technology centers. I know y'all do a good job here. Brian Coleman's there. It's a great job. And also, if they're going to serve our country, then they need to have the skills they need to go and serve our country. We also have to do something about our teachers. We're in a teacher shortage crisis. We have got to recruit, retain, and reward our teachers in South Carolina. They need less paperwork. They need other things too.
Thank you so much. I'm going to remind you that the red card means you've got 15 seconds left. You can finish the one sentence.
All right. So they need less paperwork, less testing, and restore discipline so our teachers can teach and our students can learn.
Perfect. Thank you. Sir? Not at this point. It's full speed ahead. I will let you, whenever it gets 15 seconds, just finish your thought and we'll kind of go from there. I know all forums are what they are. I've done 20 of them over the last 2 years. Everyone's a little different. It's how we operate. The next candidate will be Ellen Weaver.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back here in Rock Hill in York County. I am Ellen Weaver, running for State Superintendent of Education, and here to humbly ask for your vote on June the 14th. I am so honored to have been endorsed by your very own Congressman, Ralph Norman, conservative champion, man of his word. I have worked with him for many years through my experience as an employee in Senator Jim DeMint's office. I worked for him for about 12 years right out of school. When he retired from the U.S. Senate, he helped me start an organization called Palmetto Promise Institute. We have been fighting for conservative values and public policy in Columbia for the last almost 9 years now. And that really is where I have sharpened my love and my desire of K-12 education. I want our South Carolina schools to be the best in the country. I don't want us to just settle for good enough. I want us to be the very, very best. And in my service in Columbia and the various capacities in which I have served, I have had a front row seat to the many dysfunctions of our education system. Our funding structure is broken. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. We do have woke curriculum and indoctrination in our schools. It is a fact. And don't let anyone in the media or in the education system gaslight you and tell you that it's not really there and that you're not seeing what you actually are seeing. We'll talk a little bit more about that later too. But we've got to stand up for our parents. I feel like right now parents have been so put upon, so frustrated by what has happened at their local school boards. They don't feel like they're being heard. But it's not just parents, it's teachers too. Clearly, the system is not working for far too many of our students, 2/3 of whom are not able to read and do math on grade level. It is not working well for our teachers who are burdened by just ridiculous amounts of paperwork and red tape. And it's not working for our parents who feel like they are sidelined and ignored and belittled when they dare to stand up and ask questions. As your state superintendent of education, I will be a communicator in chief. I will clearly articulate what I believe our education system needs and where it needs to go. This is the biggest opportunity of the state superintendent of education because yes, there are certainly technical aspects that the superintendent is responsible for under federal law, under state law, and in working with local school districts. However, the superintendent of education needs to be the quarterback of our education system. We all love football in this state, and we know that different jobs require different techniques and different responsibilities and talents. In my job at Palmetto Promise Institute, I have been privileged to work with the business community, to work with parents, to understand the perspectives of different stakeholders. I will bring all of those perspectives to the job of State Superintendent of Education. I will build the coalitions in the General Assembly that it takes to actually move ideas and policy forward. And I will have open lines of communication with teachers and parents so that they feel heard, that they know that they have an advocate and a voice at the very highest levels of our government so that we can all come together to restore trust through transparency for the children who matter most, the hearts and minds of these children that God created. I'm so honored to be with you tonight. Thank you very much.
Brian Chapman is next.
Thank you. I remember my summer in 1981 being here as a student body vice president from Hartsville High School and going through the team building and those type of dynamics. Raised on a farm, soybeans, cotton, corn, rye, oats, wheat, driving combines at 16 years old, and then going in my dad's saying, education is what's all about. Went to a private school in Emmanuel and Hartsville, then went to Hartsville High School, the first soccer style kicker in history for Hartsville. Then went on to USC, and then went and got 2 master's degrees at Southwestern Seminary. 5 years of hard work. But then God has called me into the ministry at 10th grade. I used to read my Bible 1 chapter a day through high school. And this foundation of being a pastor for 33 years. In the last 17 years, my church is in the movie theater. Red, yellow, black and white, purple, green, and mean, every color in between. That's what I've been doing. But also, I'm on the school board for 8 years. Also, I taught for 9 years in Southside Middle School. Also, I'm a certified bus driver. 500 employees for the Superintendent of Education is related to the buses in each of our districts. There's a whole gamut of business as well. My first business I started 20 years ago was a daycare. After 9 years, I was not collecting money. I was too nice, and they said, we can't do it anymore. So I transferred that to a transportation. They say that my transportation company that deals with high school, 1 high school, 2 middles, and 18 elementaries, we transport kids of all colors are on my bus. As a bus driver, and using that for those 10 years, we work with the Boys and Girls Club, a regional place. We work with private and public after-school cares. We also work with the city of Florence. They say what my model is that I created through God's wisdom and grace and mercy and love is the only one in the nation that combines all those dynamics to help students where they are. Also, I started a driving school with my son on the camera up there, decided to go to Cleveland Institute of Art and leave all that money behind life scholarships here and go to Cleveland with $60,000 a year. So I incorporated, and I have trained staff that run Be Helpful Transportation. I have trained staff at my church at the Julia Ford Movie Theater. I have trained staff, community connected, working with kids in the cars. And when all that happens after June 28th, that they run off, I'll have all my people trained because I love community building. I love training people to connect. And I love people to run and walk in their standard of helping others. So it seemed like when I was asked by the homeless director in Florence, Brian Braddock, Tim Tebow spoke there last year. Dr. Ben Carson's coming next year. He said, Brian, God's calling me June 19th. Some of these camps have been here a year and a half. In 2 months, I look forward to telling you about BITE, Business Innovative Trade Education. I'm already working to help people get educated and be able to help get a job like EMT, make $20 an hour while you're in college. Home, health, occupational, medical education. Helping students be certified to work before they graduate. Working with CAP programs all around, helping people to connect and get jobs for that 25% who's not going to go to college. I love how God's called me in my diversity of touching humanity, touching others, and touching people in a way that will blow people's mind. Hallelujah.
Next, Dr. Kizzy Gibson.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Kizzy Gibson, and I'm extremely excited to be running for South Carolina Superintendent of Education. I grew up in Orangeburg, South Carolina. I was raised by 2 educators and administrators who spent close to 40 years in the classroom, and I'm very honored to have both of my parents here this evening, Bretta Staley and Alvin Staley. Thank you so much for your support and for being here. I earned my Bachelor of Arts in Art Education from Claflin University in 2003. I earned my Master's in Education from Columbia College in 2005. And I earned my doctorate in education from North Central University in 2016. I've spent over 18 years in the classroom. I've taught in Hampton County, Orangeburg County, Lexington, Richland 5, Lexington 1, South Carolina Connections Academy. And I've also served as a teacher mentor, a teacher evaluator, a truancy interventionist, a charter school committee chair, a charter school board member, a professional development facilitator, but I believe that my most important leadership role was being a student mentor throughout those years as an educator. Currently, I live in Lexington, South Carolina with my husband, Jerry. We are raising 2 teens, David Jeremiah, who is 16, and Alicia May, who is 14. So in August, we will have 2 high schoolers. So if anything, please keep Dr. Gibson in prayer. Those of you who have raised teenagers, you know the challenges that are there with raising teens. In regards to what I'm currently doing, I am currently a teacher. I served 2 terms as the president of West Metro Republican Women. I currently serve as the state chaplain for the Federation, South Carolina Federation of Republican Women. And I served 1 term as the 2nd Congressional District Director for South Carolina Federation of Republican Women. As far as what I want to do in South Carolina, definitely want to make sure that we have a certified student mentorship program. That program would include dads on duty, moms as mentors, entrepreneurs, veterans, officers on the offense, pastors of promise, all individuals in our community who we feel possess characteristics that we want our children to possess one day. Things like forgiveness, grit, resilience, optimism, courage, all those things that have taken Americans from persecution to being prosperous. I want to implement something called Soft Target No More, which is a school safety initiative that would build bridges between our officers and students. It would also implement the metal detector wands in schools and implement character education, character virtues, which are extremely important. That's why I believe that's why we are where we are with students in South Carolina with the discipline issues that we are seeing. We want to eradicate CRT and the tenets of CRT, but what are we going to replace it with? I really believe that 1776 curriculum through Woodson and Hillsdale is going to be vital for us to implement. Not only will it bring real history to South Carolina students, but it's also going to implement those character virtues that we are missing in our school system. I want to make sure that every child in South Carolina has a financial literacy course that they are enrolled in that they must take before they graduate. What sense does it make to have students become lawyers, doctors, plumbers, engineers, cosmetologists, but they cannot manage their own money? So extremely important. I want to see home economics, trade, and tech schools supported in the state of South Carolina. Dr. Kizzy Gibson, June 14. Thank you.
And then Travis Benson.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Travis Betson, and I'm running to be your next state superintendent of education. We've all heard the saying that the first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem. I'm here to declare loud and clear that South Carolina's education system has a problem. 2/3 of our students are not reading or doing math at grade level. CRT, SEL, and other woke curriculum are already creeping their way into South Carolina's school system, and educrats are fighting to take away your parental rights. I want you to declare with me right now, enough is enough. Thank you, a little audience participation. So, you're going to hear a lot about our policies, and you're going to see a lot of similarities between all 6 candidates here. But I want to tell you that South Carolina has never had the opportunity to elect somebody with more executive experience, more skin in the game. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old coming up through the ranks, and a passion for results than you have now. When I graduated Somerville High School, we were 48th in the nation. That was in 1999. I think last time I checked, depending on which poll, it's either at 43rd to 47th. So not much has changed. So you have to ask yourself a very simple question. Are you happy with what your tax dollars have bought you? Are you wanting to continue the path that we have gone through? Everyone up here has been a part of the education system in some way or another. And so if you're happy with those results, I would encourage you to continue to vote the way you have been voting. If you want real, substantive change, I'm the guy for that. People say, well, Travis, you weren't a teacher. You're right. I'm not qualified to be a teacher. I'm thankful for our teachers. You guys are on the front lines, and I don't think you're supported enough. I believe that teachers and parents have been divided by school boards or nefarious reasons, and a litany of reasons why they have been divided, and PTAs are on the decline. But teachers and parents are the 2 most important people in a child's education, so they need to be championed. But make no mistake, this is not a teaching position. This is the CEO of South Carolina's school system, and that's what I am. I have been the CEO of C&T Foundations for 15 years. I sit at an executive roundtable every month with CEOs from around the state. We are on the front lines of the business problems. My generation, Gen X, were told a lie. You need a 4-year degree. I can tell you that's not true to be successful. There are thousands of jobs, 6-figure paying jobs where you just need a high school diploma. And the private sector is already doing South Carolina's job. We're already creating the apprenticeship programs. I can tell you in my firm, we're teaching people balancing checkbooks and basic life skills. So the private sector is doing that job. But you've never had the opportunity to take private sector mentality into the public sector. We all saw how great and how prosperous our country was under the leadership of a businessman. I wasn't paying $5 a gallon for diesel. Hate him or love him, there are many things that Trump could be divisive about, but we were better off, right? I saw a shirt the other day that said, I would take a mean tweet right now with some cheaper gas. I'm here to show you what real common sense business principles can do in South Carolina's education system. The fundamental difference is going to be leadership. There's going to be a lot of similarities in policy. We all agree, and I give you my solemn promise, if you elect me, there will be no CRT or SCL. Girls will play girls' sports, and you will have full parental rights, and we will unify parents and teachers once again so that we can get what our tax dollars are meant to do, and that's educate our children. And I'm not striving to just get into the 40s. We want to strive to be one of the best in the nation. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to begin now with the questions. Every candidate will answer this question. Again, 4 minutes, and time will start whenever you start talking, all right? Question number 1. If you were elected, please explain in detail what policy, action plan, and consequences for teachers and administrators that you would implement to combat and stop indoctrination curriculum like CRT, SEL, political, sexual, and gender ideology that is taught daily in classrooms and available in school libraries. Brian Chapman is up first.
Let's have some fun tonight. My wife and I have been married 31 years. And we were given 12 years ago 3 kids from foster care, but we didn't get any foster pay. As a pastor, they needed a place to go. So we got them 12 years ago at 5, 9, and 12, 14. And as we've gone through life, we had all sorts of different learning curves. And life is a curve. I like transparency. A lot of people say about it, but they don't show you nothing about their past. I love the chance to deal with the LBG community because I was in a same-sex relationship for 3 years while I was in school. I know their agenda back then, and it hasn't changed that much. They don't want to face me because Jesus, he loved politics. He can turn those tables over in a heartbeat. As you look at CRT, as a pastor, we shouldn't be critical of anybody's race because, as it says in Revelation, all tongues, all tribes, and all nations will be around the throne. That's why we see so much anger toward Christianity, no matter what color you are, because they want to decapitate us, and knowing that we are so inclusive and more tolerant than any side on the left will ever be. The church has a foundation. As that being my model and being incapable, I'm not scared of that. And looking at the critical race theory in SEL, I hate to be overstating the obvious. What is the House and Senate of our great state? The majority are Republicans, and they could not do it like Florida. Bless their little hearts. They are in Columbia and did nothing for this issue, and we can't do nothing because of them. Remember that, guys. I have to follow their laws. If they can't deal with it, then I can't answer that question about CRT and SEL. We could all be cute and play the game, but they did nothing. Yes, sexuality, gender ideology is taught daily. I've been in life libraries in District 1, Florence, South Carolina. I don't play. Maybe in y'all's district? I've taught with 4 or 5. I don't have the LBGQ in my libraries in District 1. So you let me, I know how to take care of it because I'm taking care of it now. I'm involved. I'm engaged. I know what's in my libraries. It ain't there. But yes, I know it is. So that's where looking at people who don't want to say they have to have an educational background or the ability to understand what's going on in our districts. But I'm ready to have a hotline. I'm ready to give those teachers who in other districts want to do that, give them parameters, 3 steps, 3 strikes and you're out. But guess what? If I don't have support in Columbia, anything I suggest goes back to local levels. 1776, I'm very familiar with Prager University. But every local school board can go, yep, or no. We can be all excited about 1776, but we have to understand that every school board goes, yep, or no. If I give you curriculum or give you guidelines or get rid of 3 teachers for being overtly against what my policies, if the school board says yes or no to what I say, you got to know the rules. You got to know how it works. That's why building community and building leadership, you have to know the dirt in the details. Have a great night. See you in a little bit.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kizzy Gibson.
I would like to propose to the members of the General Assembly that a restrictive policy be crafted to include all of the things that were listed in the question. Making the teaching of these different ideologies illegal, and to follow it with criminal penalties, such as a citation or revoking a teacher's certificate. When discussing sex education, it needs to only be discussed in terms of reproduction and health, not gender fluidity or the things that we're currently seeing taking place in South Carolina and across the state. And also, it needs to, of course, have parental approval. Right now, I know that as a parent, I have to sign paperwork for my son and my daughter to take sex ed in both high school and middle school. But I would like to implement a tip line. And that idea came to me when I was watching what was being implemented in Virginia. And I thought, why not implement something like that in South Carolina so that when these instances occur across the state, there is one number that can be called where an administrator, a teacher, a board member, a parent, a student could easily make a tip, and then it could be investigated and looked into further to stop whatever is being done within the classroom, within the school that is not appropriate. I would like to have a live list available online. I think we are tech savvy enough to be able to implement that across the state. And that live list would be for books and resources that are available for students to have access to within the library, the media center, even within the teacher's classroom. That anyone who has been in education understands that it's not just the media center that we need to be concerned about. All teachers have their own private or libraries within their classroom. And it's great if you give me a list at the beginning of the school year what you have. But I want to know what books you are removing and putting in throughout the school year. So that's why I'm saying we need something live that is constantly updated so that parents have the ability to see that it's very transparent. Also, I would like to see a filter system put in place. Yes, we want to remove the things that are blatantly pornography or blatantly CRT in its roots, but what if something slips through the system? We want parents to be able to go in and say, I don't want my child to have access to this book, this magazine, this article, this resource, this online resource, whatever it may be. And that's what parents in South Carolina want. That's what we desire. So we need to make sure that we are able to implement something like that throughout the state. Transparency is extremely important. So parents need to be aware of any and all resources that their child will have access to and be utilizing. A lot of times we don't consider the outside resources that are supplemental that children have access to. I know my daughter, for instance, came home and was talking about Christopher Columbus and how bad he was. And I said, hold on, pause. Where did you hear this? Immediate sit down at the table, and it was a resource that was given to them, something electronic. So having that ability to see that resource and examine it for yourself and examine the appropriateness of it is going to be extremely important. If we're going to build bridges between parents and our education system that we have to be transparent and renew that trust. I think in 2020, many parents are very disappointed in what we saw passing through as education, when indeed it was indoctrination. So those are a couple of steps that I want to take as your superintendent to ensure that transparency is there and that none of these things that were mentioned are slipping through the cracks.
Well, I think this is one of the most important issues that we are going to talk about tonight, and I think we have to understand fundamentally what is at stake when we are talking about CRT and SEL and some of these other pernicious acronyms that have invaded public education across America, and yes, even here in South Carolina. So the ideas of anti-racism, Ibram X. Kendi, Kimberly Crenshaw, the folks who are kind of the big promoters of CRT and have been for decades, really call for discrimination. It is discrimination under another guise. And I firmly believe that what they are calling for in their quote-unquote anti-racism is a violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. When you are compelling students to say that they are oppressors or any other form of this woke CRT nonsense, you are violating their free exercise, you are violating their equal protection, you are violating their free speech. And so I think any law that purports to deal with this can't simply be a ban on an acronym like CRT, because the left is so adept at renaming things, at finding loopholes. We have got to create a system that simply says you may not violate the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by compelling speech or adoption of any ideas that discriminate based on any form of race, ethnicity, color, or national origin. And how do we enforce that in a school? Well, total transparency is where it starts. Again, not just for the state-derived resources, but for the supplemental materials that are introduced into classrooms. But we've got to take that a step further, because there is a diversity, equity, and inclusion cottage industry that goes around and sells their services to districts and says, hey, you know what you need? You need a diversity, equity, and inclusion audit in your district. We're going to come in and do an audit and then tell you everything that you're doing wrong and the resources that you need to put into place in order to fix that. Well, I think we need to have total transparency for those contracts, anything that has to do with diversity, equity, inclusion. I want to stop them, and the way to stop them is through making them public so that the public can then pressure their district to say, enough is enough, this stuff is crazy. We also have to be clear that we do want to teach honest history. There are things in our past that none of us are proud of. But we can also look at the example of Dr. Martin Luther King, who appealed to the promise of our founding ideals to say America was not founded on hatred and bigotry and racism. It appealed to our highest natures and unity. And yes, we did not recognize that perfectly, but we are moving towards that more perfect union. And CRT and all of these woke ideologies move us toward hatred and division, not toward the unity and promise of our founding ideals. In terms of what kind of penalties need to be in place for a violation of this, first of all, I want to be clear. We have to have processes in place so that parents know how to report this kind of stuff, so that teachers know how to report this kind of stuff when it is forced on them as professional development. But we need to have clear reporting processes in place. I believe that for a violation of a board or state policy, there should be a 30-day administrative leave without pay for the first violation, and I think there should be termination upon the second offense. We've got to be very clear. So again, I would also stand to debar any kind of contractor who brought DE&I into districts. Thank you.
The next three candidates will get the exact same question. In all fairness, I'll just read the question again so those in the audience know it as well. If you're elected, please explain in detail what policy, action plan, and consequences for teachers and administrators that you would implement to combat and stop indoctrination curriculum like CRT, SEL, political, sexual, and gender ideology that is taught daily in classrooms and available in school libraries. Next is Linda Leventis Wells.
Well, let me explain just a couple of things about the state superintendent. We serve as the secretary and administration officer to the State Board of Education. And with that being said, we have to work with the State Board of Education to get things done. So, with all of these things we've been discussing, I would have a group of superintendents, administrators, principals, and to discuss exactly all of these topics of concerns and come up with recommendations of how we're going to do this. Because let me just tell you, superintendents hire administrators. Administrators and interview groups hire principals. Principals hire teachers. And then the teachers are the ones that are teaching our children. And we've got to make sure that we have the best teachers teaching our children and that they're teaching the coursework, the things they are certified in to teach, and not adding their positions on things or their take on classes or putting wanting me to tell Kathy, oh, so you feel this way? Have you thought you are this? Maybe you think you're this. That is not a teacher's place. They do not need to be teaching SEL. They do not need to be teaching CRT. They do not need to be teaching any of these transgender situations. Nothing. That is not their job. Their job is to educate our children. So I would work with the state board, the South Carolina Board of Education, and come up with a bill that we present to our legislatures. And it be, because we've got to rectify all of these things, and we've got to put it into law. Do you realize Rita Allison spent several weeks trying to get this passed, a CRT law passed? And do you know our Republicans who could have pushed it through did nothing? Did nothing. Why? We had the majority in the Senate and the House, and it was not passed. Shame on them. Shame on them. I'm going to work with our South Carolina Board of Education. I'm going to work with our legislatures. I'm going to work with our governor, because we're getting 3,000 books that come into our library. I'm on the school board of Greenville County, the largest district in the state of South Carolina. We order library books. We got 3,000. A lot of our schools got 3,000 books. On the outside, they look great. On the inside, they are full of porn and CRT and stupidness. That's my word, I'm sorry. Stupidness. And you know what? It's got to stop. Our governor needs to step up to the plate like DeSantis did and say enough is enough. We need to make sure, and what we've done is we formed a committee, our school board. We're forming a committee, and we're going to come up with publishing companies that take all that stupidness out of the materials and have content where it's age appropriate. And I'm going to tell you another thing. Parents have a voice, and we want them to speak on behalf of their children, and that's how we found out at the school board that there's a CRT problem through the parents. Thank you.
Travis Benson.
Thank you, Moms of Liberty, for that question. I think, guys, normally this one question is like 4 different questions, so I'll try to unpack it. First and foremost, leadership starts at the top. That's what you're hiring us to do. As a CEO, it's my job to build coalitions. This is a legislative issue. And I agree with Linda, shame on the Republican, but I would say, where was Molly? Because it's the superintendent's job to vouch for the teachers and to vouch for the parents, which that person was elected to do. Leadership starts at the top. I guess I'm going to make a bunch of sayings. In order to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs, right? You're going to have to hurt some feelings. So let me start with one that's really short. When it comes to LGBTQ and transgender, the alphabet mafia, as I like to frame them, that's an easy question. God said there's a boy and a girl. That's it. That's what my Bible says. I'm willing to hurt people's feelings. Like, nope, boys and girls. And if you were born as a boy, you can only compete in boy sports. I can tell you, as the father of 2 daughters, there's a fire that only a father would feel if some dude came and trampled on my daughter's athletics. Women, you have fought too hard and too long for equal rights and equal representation to have some dude just come to, nope, I'm going to do it. That doesn't make sense to me. Willing to hurt feelings. I've been using the word full stop a lot, so I won't use that. But yeah, that's easy. Not on my watch. Not going to happen. Let me give you some tough love, because you are parents. I think for too long, I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I won the wife lottery. She does a great job, so I don't have the tiredness that she has. So thank you, Yuli. But I think too many parents were tired, and you're like, okay, little Johnny, little Susie, go to school. Mommy and Dad just want to have a cup of coffee. And you guys looked at school as daycare. COVID did us the biggest favor ever. If there's a silver lining to COVID, we woke up. We go, wait, what are you doing? No. That's not right. And now we're paying attention. So make no mistake, the liberal agenda is trying to divide us. And it is not accidental and is not unintentional. They know how to do it, and it's through the school education system. They are purposely using the CRT, SEL, or any other acronym they want to call it, to divide our nation. I believe this is the Reaganite Forum, and I believe it was Reagan that said, we're never more than one generation away from losing our democracy or our country. This is real, and it happens now, and you need somebody with executive leadership who's going to stand in the void and say, not on my watch, who has the ability to build coalitions with Democrats and Republicans. Because, by the way, good ideas are not red or blue. They're just good ideas. And they're going to get the laws passed. They're going to lobby on behalf of the teachers. They're going to lobby on the behalf of the parents. When it comes to actual things we could do as superintendent, we have the power of the bully pulpit. I'm not going to say it's all at the legislative. I do a lot of marketing. I'm really good at that in my private world. We're going to make a website and a tip line. Very easy. If you see something, say something. Boom. And we'll call them out. If there's XYZ teacher who is not teaching an approved curriculum, yep, can't do that. It's easy, but it takes a willingness that no one has possessed in the years that you had and elected a superintendent of education. I possess that willingness to fight for what we believe as conservative Republicans is right.
Thank you. And Kathy Manus.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened in the General Assembly this year dealing with CRT. The House Public Works Committee and the House Education and Public Works Committee and the House of Representatives spent over 15 hours debating and taking testimony on multiple bills that sought to prevent CRT and biased instruction from taking place in the public schools of South Carolina. One of the first steps that I will take as your state superintendent of education is to work with the General Assembly to pass legislation to make sure CRT is not taught in our schools. And one advantage that I have over the other candidates is that I have been working with the members of the General Assembly. I have those relationships, and we'll go in and fight for that. Now I want to make it clear. CRT is not part of our South Carolina standards. And when I'm superintendent of education, it will not be. I will make sure that there's transparency to parents and educators on what should and should not be taught in our schools. I will be proactive and take a personal action. I will set up a parental portal for total transparency. And the purpose of that portal is to partner with parents to collect input and provide full information on curriculum, standards, and spending. If there are reports of CRT being taught in the classroom, I will do exactly what I did last weekend. I will pick up the phone and call the school district. You see, some group has put out some information that I support CRT because I had my picture made with the South Carolina Teacher of the Year. As the Executive Director of Palmetto State Teachers Association, I have attended the South Carolina Teacher of the Year Gala for the past 20 years and have taken my picture with each and every South Carolina Teacher of the Year. Now, some found evidence of CRT on his social media. And so they put the information out as Kathy Manus supports CRT because she had her picture made with the South Carolina Teacher of the Year. Well, I called his superintendent and I discussed that information that was being put out there. We had a nice conversation about that. He has had a conversation with the principal and the Teacher of the Year. So let's just be clear. The first Moms for Liberty speaker that testified in the House Education and Public Works Committee on CRT, and there were a lot of moms and parents that came, and I appreciate everything that they had to say. But she testified saying 99.9% of teachers across the state are doing the right thing. And I'm going to talk fast. I know this is true because I've visited classrooms for decades. I've seen professionals that are dedicating their lives. That doesn't mean that there aren't some instances where teachers are engaging in instruction related to political topics that are inappropriate and beyond the scope of our standards. I will work with the General Assembly to finish the work they started this session in passing the Transparency and Integrity in Education Act that includes each school district adopting a policy for procedures used to report and investigate an alleged violation that includes up to being turned over to the State Board of Education for disciplinary actions. Since the board did not pass this session, Proviso 1.93, partisanship curriculum, is still in effect, preventing CRT from being taught in our schools. We've got to teach the basics, fundamental civics and citizenship, not critical race theory. Perfect.
Okay, we're going to move on to question 2. Again, all candidates will get the same question. We'll get 4 minutes each. The time will begin whenever you start talking. The 2015 South Carolina State Plan for Equitable Access to Excellent Educator Plan was approved by the U.S. Department of Education in exchange for federal funding. If you are elected and decide not to submit a plan, what programs or methods would you implement in order to function without federal funding? Kathy, you're up next.
All right, I'm back again. Thank you. I support my Congressman Joe Wilson and the legislation he proposed, the Local Control Education Act. I believe that decisions should be made locally by parents, teachers, and principals, and not bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. Under the Obama administration and the federal law known as No Child Left Behind, the states were required to create and send to the U.S. Department of Education plans for the Educator Equity Plan. These plans describe the steps that states would take to ensure that students in poverty and students with disabilities had access to the same high-quality education that the peers and others in the Rock Hill, York, Fort Mill school districts do. In December of 2015, Congress replaced No Child Left Behind with Every Student Succeed Act, and President Trump took office the next year. Under ESSA and the Trump administration, and so far in the Biden administration, states have not been required to submit these plans. Instead, the states submitted to Secretary Betsy DeVos a description of how they would ensure that students in poverty and with disabilities would be served with effective teachers instead of ineffective teachers. As a state superintendent of education, one of my priorities is to ensure that every South Carolina child has access to a high-quality teacher in every single classroom in South Carolina. I don't care if your student attends Fort Mill High or rural McCormick County High School. They deserve the best teacher possible. As a mother of a child with a disability and a teacher, I believe that every child deserves a quality teacher, and I will never shy away from achieving that goal. We have to reward our teachers. The question does address an important topic, though, the need for South Carolina to have more autonomy from the federal overreach and regulations. I don't want a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. telling us how to teach at South Point High School. Education decisions are best made at the local level in communities where students live, and for far too many years, the federal overreach has inhibited that local control in so many areas. But perhaps the most area that we see is the achievement, taking tests. Our students and teachers are currently subject to far too many lost instructional time in the name of high-stakes testing. We give too many tests here in the state of South Carolina, and that is because the federal government, we have to do that to receive Title I funds, which among these are testing English, math, 3 through 8. I'm not going to tell you what all, y'all know where you have to test. During just completed legislative session, Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey actually spoke about foregoing federal funds in order to free up from some of this testing requirement. And I am amening him all the way. I agree with Senator Massey that this is a conversation that we have to have. Federal funding is tied to too much testing. However, any action to walk away from these funds has to have a plan to ensure that adequate offsetting state funds will be there to ensure that our schools can deliver the quality instruction that our students deserve. I think President Reagan hit it right on with one of his core principles, block grants. Send block grants to our state with no strings attached. Let the people of South Carolina decide how we best spend our share of taxpayer money sent to Washington, and don't cost our children.
See if he's paying attention. Yeah, it's going to be more of the same for me. You need an executive leader. I unequivocally will not take federal funds that are going to come to string attached. They know what they're doing. It was the Democratic who started this, right? So they're saying, well, this is how we can weave in our agenda to get it into the school system. So federal funding comes with all kinds of problems, and I think Kathy did a great job listing the testing requirements and all the things that are wrong with that. And by the way, raise your hand if you think anything the federal government has done better than the private sector. Yeah, right? And this is not, most of the problems we see are not complicated. They're difficult. And there's a very big difference. And it comes down to leadership. Everything that you're going to hear tonight is going to come down to leadership. So when it comes down to federal funding, no, I wouldn't take any federal funding that's going to fundamentally change the culture of our country and get people off the eye of the prize of educating our students. When we focus on student outcomes, the rest will take care of itself. It's that simple, but it's hard. When it comes to what are we going to do? So South Carolina, believe it or not, does a decent job of raising funds. I know that you find that hard to believe, but every time I talk to a state legislator, whether in the Senate or the House, they all agree that Act 388 is an abomination. But then no one said, well, that's a third rail, though, we can't do that. So it's going to take a leader that's going to build a coalition, perhaps help co-author a bill and say, here's how we're going to allocate the funds. It's an allocation problem, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a funding problem. And there's a very clear distinction. And it's going to take leadership to stand in the void and say, no, that's not right. Here's a better way to do that. And you got to do it with some tough love and some caring combined. That's what's made us successful in the private sector. I run what's called a very flat organization, right? You don't need these layers of bureaucracy, by the way, because all these layers, they take money out of the board's directive. Let's make a profit. And your profit is going to be your child's education system. I hate to say it this way, but we're already at the bottom. I actually asked my campaign manager, can I say that? He goes, I don't know, but we are at the bottom. So here's some stuff, we're at the bottom. So if we don't take the federal funding, well, okay, so we might go from 48 to 49, right? It's nowhere to go but up. So let's stand in the void, say no to these things that are going to divide us, that take our eyes off the prize of our child's education, and let's work to build a coalition with the legislature and say this is what needs to happen to fix the fundamental problem. We are focused on the symptom. And if you focus on the symptom and then prescribe something, well, I messed that up, but anyhow, I had a cute little saying for number 3, but I messed it up, so. Diagnosis, prescription without diagnosis is malpractice, right? So we're focusing on the wrong thing. We need to focus on child outcomes, reading, writing, math, science. Some of these are legislative issues, and we're gonna take care of them. Absolutely, you're gonna work with legislators. But I got criticized by Fitz Newsom. Well, he talked too much about improving reading, writing, and math and science. I go, well, that's the problem. So yes, no CRT, no federal funds that are going to allow them to indoctrinate your children. I will stand in the void as your executive leader, the CEO of South Carolina's education system.
Thank you. Linda.
Kathy did touch on many items that I was going to discuss. But I think we need to really look at things. Coming from Greenville County School District, our special needs, we received $19 million from federal government. In 1975, President Nixon put into a bill stating that it would fund 40% of IDEA. And you know what? It never did that. It only funded 19%. So our special education students, we get 19 million just in Greenville. Title I, just in Greenville, we received $25 million for Title I students. Now, when you think that's one district in the state that gets that much money, how are we going to recoup that if we say we're not going to receive any federal government because strings are attached? I'm going to tell you, strings are attached to anything you get from the feds. It is. And you pay a price for it. And teachers have so many things going on in their classrooms, they don't have time to do all these mandatory tests. All of these things that are required. I've had teachers go, Linda, I don't teach that SEL line class because I don't have time. I'm trying to get my core curriculum done in the classroom. And I said, well, good, keep that up. Because that's what we need. When Travis talks about math, he's exactly right. Our math scores have gone down. I've got an article right here. Well, I'll bring it up when I have my last 2 minutes. But it shows where math is not being taught like it used to be. Reading. We've got to get our children on reading level, grade level. The pandemic was a setback. There is a learning gap that we have to work towards. When you talk about our poor students and you talk about this question, every student deserves a great teacher. And let me just tell you, the state of South Carolina has great teachers. I was a teacher. I know what goes on in a classroom. I know about lesson plans. I know about parent conferences. I know what we got to do with children that come to school that aren't prepared and help them feel good about themselves and tell them, you will be successful. You can be, you are smart. Everybody has the right to learn. I don't care who or where you're from, you have the right to learn. My grandparents on both sides, my mother, she was born in Greenville, South Carolina, but her parents were from Greece. My dad was born in Gastonia, North Carolina, his parents were from Greece. They came over to this country, the American dream. They did not speak English, but let me tell you, they worked hard, They opened a restaurant. My grandfather opened Pete's in Greenville. And when the customers came in, he did not say, "You have to speak Greek before I serve you hot dog." No. He learned English. All of them did. Because that's where we are. We are in America. God bless this America. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to read the same question for the other three candidates. Same question. The 2015 South Carolina State Plan for Equitable Access to Excellent Educator Plan was approved by the U.S. Department of Education in exchange for federal funding. If you are elected and decide not to submit a plan, what programs or methods would you implement in order to function without federal funding? Brian, you're up.
Thank you very much. That's what we have fun every time we have these roundabouts. We've been doing for like 8. And we get to hear the same thing, and then you're supposed to come up with something different, but you got the same topic, so we have lots of fun with this stuff. High poverty, high minority. I have to deal with that. I got connections in Winthrop County. I got connections in another state. Teacher retention, teacher issues. You have to get inexperienced teachers to help these students in these high poverty and high minority districts because nobody else wants to do it. The plan had great intentions to start with. Unqualified teachers trying to help these students that nobody else wants to go do. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Out of field, they're doing their best. They're certified in one area. They're going somewhere else to help somebody else. And we look at our high-performing districts and we ignore the bottom 25% of our state. Is that what a state superintendent should do? All the colors of the rainbow need to be covered. Yes, to me, the federal connections is a sad travesty. As we look at teacher turnover, no one's talking about that. You serve in those areas for 3 or 4 years, and you get your way out to a big, nice district with a lot more pay. Is that fair? As we look at this issue, and we look at the budget, as a school board member, 4.5% of our budget's gone next year as a one-time deal, tossed in there. You saw the analysis of Title I in those poverty districts. We are a poverty district, believe it or not, in Florence. That's why I know a little bit more about this issue than others, as we just use different phrases and different thoughts. Yes, high poverty and high minority is definitely something that we need to look at and continue to look at. As we look at different ways of handling these issues, that 25% of the kids I've talked about earlier who don't learn the same, maybe we need to do year-round school in these areas. Florence District 1 is doing it already. We have a modified schedule, 3 years. We're doing year-round to gain retention, 5.5 off from June to the end of July, and then we start back again. Then we have a break every 9 weeks, trying to help the lowest of the low to get better. That's the plan, that's the action. I'm going to take a couple minutes on my last one. When you have the number one thing, you forget to do the number one thing. Yesterday, I talked with the principal and our superintendent. We have an FBI-trained sex trafficker that took over curriculum in our district to help create a curriculum that was allowed by 2017. No one's created curriculum. We create a curriculum, and it's in all of our middle schools for those who are age appropriate, assigned by the parent. And then all the high schools, 1 day a week, 1 day during their 9 weeks, they have sex trafficking education and more education. So I made her the first one that I will hire and help protect our kids in a national way and understanding. We had 1,800 kids go through 3 semesters in high school and middle school. We saved 25 kids who were already targeted through a simple 5-question survey. Kids will be honest. We need to engage this culture. We need to help our kids where they are and come up with plans that are working to help all the kids, red, yellow, black, and white, purple, green, and green, and every color in between. We need to be able to make a difference. Purple, you know what purple is? Those who are wounded. A lot of people are wounded and they go around and hurt other people. we need to be able to help all God's children.
Thank you very much. Kizzy, you're up next.
When examining the plan, South Carolina State Plan for Equitable Access to Excellent Educators, it is clear that its purpose was to ensure that all students in the state of South Carolina had access to and were provided with state-certified, highly qualified, and content-specific educators. With that purpose as a foundation, I would only consider submitting a renewal plan if the revisions of the plan's language were allowed, meaning that language would have to be changed from equitable access to equal access to excellent educators for all students. Also, there would need to be absolutely no mandates or strings for hiring teachers based on race, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Also, no mandates for specific professional development for teachers. And I'm speaking more on what I currently see in South Carolina, where there is a push for culturally responsive teaching, that social emotional, the CRT tenets that we've already been speaking of. Also, no mandates for anything that teachers would have to do outside of developing their content areas. So for me, that would be visual arts or gifted and talented students. If the aforementioned changes would not be allowed, I would heavily consider the idea of redistribution of funds from outdated, repetitive, or ineffective programs that we already have. So using those funds, shutting them down, using those funds to help ensure that all students in South Carolina, regardless of their race, their socioeconomic status, and coming from the corridor of shame, that's extremely important. We definitely want those children in that area to have access to high quality educators. So the program itself, good intentions, but the language definitely would have to be reshaped in order for me to even consider resubmitting a plan similar to that. But if not, then redistributing the funds, shutting down programs that are repetitive or that are ineffective, and using those funds to help ensure that every child has a qualified, highly qualified, and certified teacher in their classroom to teach them. And just a small caveat, I always speak very heavily about instructional assistants. We often forget about how important their role is in education. My grandmother was a teacher assistant, and I would never ever negate their role. They leave their fingerprint on a child just as much as a certified teacher does, and we need to begin to uplift them and provide them with professional development as well, and ensure that they continue to seek out our profession. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Vanessa.
Well, as Ronald Reagan said, since we're all getting in our Reagan quotes to the Reaganites, there is a time for choosing. And I think that time for choosing is very much upon the next superintendent of education. My big takeaway from the tone and tenor and content of this question is, how do we lessen and even eliminate our reliance on federal funding? I don't even want to say yes to block grants. I mean, it'd be better than what we have now, but how about we just don't send our money to Washington in the first place and keep it here, right? If you're going to replace federal funding, though, you have to actually know the system and have a plan to do it. So right now, we receive just under 10% of our total state education funding from federal sources. We are spending over $12 billion a year on K-12 education in this state, and that averages out to about $15,500 per pupil. Now, that does vary by district, so that's the statewide average. But I'm here to tell you, we don't have an underfunding problem in South Carolina, we have a misfunding problem. We have one of the most complicated and convoluted formulas in the entire country. There is so much money that is tied up in ineffective, inefficient programs and the ineffective, inefficient bureaucracy that it takes to administer those programs. And as your state superintendent of education, I will continue the fight that I have been fighting on the outside for the last 6 or 7 years to consolidate line items in our funding formula to tie dollars to actual students and their characteristics. That student-centered kind of funding formula is how we ultimately get to the education system of the future, where money can follow the child to the education option of a parent's choice. So again, we can make a lot of promises to you as candidates and say a lot of things that sound really good, but I think you should judge us based on our track record and what we've done. So I would encourage you to go to PalmettoPromiseInstitute.org. There you will see on the top tab something called the Artist Ware Center. Artist Ware is Senator Tim Scott's grandfather, and we were proud to partner with Senator Scott to name this education center in his grandfather's honor for just the incredible impact and legacy that he left in the senator's life. But on that dashboard, you will find a performance and spending dashboard that shows every single district in this state, where you can look at their basic performance on reading and math, lined up with how much they're paying teachers on average, how much they're paying administrators on average, how much they're receiving. And I'm again going to tell you, money does not correlate with outcomes. And how do I know this? Let's look at our highest spending or highest revenue per pupil district in the state. They're bringing in over $25,000 per pupil. Our lowest revenue per pupil districts in the state are bringing in just under $11,000 per pupil. Okay, similar poverty in this highest and lowest district, similar very poor outcomes. So for $15,000 additional dollars, District A is not doing any better by students than District B. This is a clear lack of leadership, a lack of clarity and alignment. And as your superintendent of education, I will not be afraid to go to the General Assembly with these facts, and not just the General Assembly. I'll go to the public to build the support that it's going to take to put the pressure on the General Assembly to get something done. Thank you.
All right, in this portion of our questioning, these are very specific candidate questions, so very specific to the candidates. Up to this point, the candidates have been receiving the questions. They have no idea what will be asked of them. Candidates, I'll say your name, read the question, you'll come up here, and you'll have 2 minutes. So 2 minutes for this, all right? 2 minutes. First up is Travis Betson. Since you have you come on up if you want to come on up, that way you'll go much faster. Since you have no background in education and possibly lack a master's degree, please explain why you think you are qualified for this position.
I find this to be a very easy question. If a master's degree, by the way, which I will have by the time the November election rolls around, so we will check that very clear box that the legislature said that's a law. So don't worry about that. That's easy. So master's degree, we'll check in that box. I'm going to steal a line from my colleague here, Ellen. If letters behind your name were the solution to South Carolina's education problem, all our kids would be going to Harvard. Your line is dripping with letters behind people's names. And this is not to take offense to my colleague, Dr. Gisman. She's a phenomenal teacher. Please don't misunderstand me. This goes back to I have not been in a classroom. This is not a teacher's position. Dr. Kizzy's a phenomenal teacher. She's been good to school. We have a great forum of candidates here. But the question before you is, what separates us? Was the very line in policy? It's executive leadership. I'm the only one before you that has served as a CEO for the last 15 years, who has a track record of making tough decisions and holding people accountable and delivering results. I am not bankrupt. I have a great life in the private sector. So by that fact, I can tell you, we deliver results. Unashamedly, this is the CEO of the state's education system. So you have to ask yourself if you're satisfied with the letters behind people's names. And Molly Spearman's a music teacher. That didn't train her at all to be a leader. Those are tough love facts. It's a leadership position, and that's what this state has lacked. Period.
Thank you very much. Next, Kathy Manus. Please explain your conservative credentials in light of being supported by Democratic groups opposing school choice and having campaigned for Democratic bills and praised by Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris.
Okay. Well, if you pull my voter record, it says strong Republican. I have been elected and been served on Lexington Town Council, one of the most conservative towns in South Carolina. If I weren't a conservative, they would not keep putting me on that council. And I am so happy you asked me that question, because I want to explain that Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi. See, when I was elected second vice president of the National League of Cities, Trump was our president. And I was so excited that we would have a Republican president of the National League of Cities and a Republican president. Well, elections have consequences. And when I became the president, and I will always be known as the Zoom president because all my meetings were on Zoom, instead of being able to introduce Vice President Pence, that I was so excited that I was going to be able to do that, I had to introduce Vice President Harris. And she says to me, "Thank you, Councilwoman Kathy Manus from Lexington, for that introduction." Then I had to introduce Pelosi on a Zoom meeting. And she says, "Thank you, Kathy Manus from Lexington, South Carolina, for your leadership." So there are groups out there, and there are campaigns out there, who have taken those snippets and called me a liberal. That is the furthest from the truth. And I am sick of dirty politics in South Carolina. Get up here and talk about the good things I can do, and do not blast me because I am the first person from South Carolina to serve as the president of the National League of Cities, and I am proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda. Seeing that you have publicly opposed Common Core, can you please explain, while as a school board member, that you did nothing to remove Common Core and voted to approve federal funding that required the advancement of CRT?
Okay, so first of all, I did not vote for CRT. And second, what we're talking about is 8 years ago when we were developing the strategic plan for the school district of Greenville. Years ago, they had over 2,000 people involved in the strategic plan. It included teachers, business people, all 70,000 students, counselors, administrators, community members, leaders, etc. And they came up with that we would have social emotional learning, social counselors, and so forth for students with mental health, etc. in that. I want you to raise your hand if 5 years ago you knew what CRT was. I want you to raise your hand if you knew what SEL stood for. Raise it. You didn't. You didn't know until this president took office, and then everything went to heck in the handbag. And that's what happened. So when you say something like that, shame on you, whoever did that research and didn't tell the truth. You know what? I'm a little tired of people just, I heard that, oh, I said I don't wear a mask, but if you have COVID, then you need to wear a mask. I have never, ever said that. I'm all about choice. I'm about choice for school, private, public, homeschool, charter, etc. I served on the board charter at Greenville Tech. I love charters, but let me just tell you something. When it comes to COVID, DHEC is back on our case. Oh, we're getting inundated with cases. I know we're getting inundated with cases. I'm not gonna wear a mask. And the other thing is, it's your choice. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't.
Thank you so much. Ellen. You began your campaign knowing that you did not qualify with a master's degree. Why are you waiting until the last minute to possibly attain the degree? And what is your plan if you do not obtain the degree before the election?
Well, this is a great opportunity to put to rest some untruths and half-truths that have been told by other campaigns about this requirement and what it all entails. So I'm proud to let you know that I am currently working on my master's degree in educational leadership from an accredited self-paced program. I am on track to complete that by October. I am a Reagan Republican who believes in the rule of law, and therefore I follow the laws as they are written. The candidate oath that I signed said I would be fully qualified by the general election or as prescribed by state law. I will be fully qualified. The state law actually does not require you to have your master's degree by the general election. It simply says the superintendent must have a master's degree, which would mean when you were sworn in January of 2023. However, to put it again to rest, I will have my master's degree in October and proud to do it. But there are other campaigns who are out there saying that, oh no, what if the, candidate isn't qualified and it'll go to the Democrats by default. That person really saying that should not be your next superintendent, because she clearly doesn't understand how election law in South Carolina works, and if she's that fundamentally misinformed about that, maybe she shouldn't be running our education system either. There's a process in place by which a Republican nominee would be selected under her imaginary worst case scenario, which again is not going to happen, because I will have my degree in educational leadership from an accredited, self-paced online program by October of 2022. Thank you very much.
Dr. Gibson, please tell us if you support the law requiring a master's degree for the superintendent of education position. Why or why not?
Yes, I do support that law. Anyone who is in the field of education understands that the majority of educators actually have a master's, and they have master's plus 30, and then, like in my case, have earned a doctorate degree, which is a terminal degree in education. And I've heard my colleagues say that the letters behind your name don't make you a great leader. No, they don't. And also, boxing a candidate into just a teacher realm, I think, is very belittling, because outside of being an educator, I'm also a mom, I'm a wife, I've been a leader in education, a teacher, evaluator, the list goes on and on. So to box an individual in is also belittling, but we won't go there tonight. Let's talk about why I support it. Number one, if you're going to be over education in the state of South Carolina, why would you want your educators to have more education than you? We are lifelong learners. That's what we support. So we should be modeling that throughout our entire lives. Thank you.
Brian Chapman. Since you have no background in education, please explain why you think you're qualified for this position.
What'd you say? 9 years of teaching doesn't qualify me to be on this stage.
Since you have no background in education, please explain why you think you're qualified for this position.
I reckon the 180 days, 9 years I taught, doesn't matter. Okay, that's interesting. What a concept. I'm not certified to teach. I volunteered to do that in the school district through a 1952 Supreme Court. So really, in some facts, I didn't get paid, but just to get involved and help people with a biblical learning. It's also Jewish law, 1952, that you can do that. So as a person that came in for 9 years to Southside Middle School and having 150 kids trying to get in my class, we talked about what in hell do you want? We talked about different things about God, sex, good sex. So I taught kids, and they had a waiting list to get in there because of the biblical perspective. And so I reckon by not having a certification in my 2 master's degrees, I'm not certified to teach, but I did it for 9 years. So I'm a little confused like y'all are. So I taught that for 9 years, and I had a great time. 1,500 kids. I've done some weddings and funerals of those kids afterwards, and they still call me and still see them in Florence. So I reckon if you don't have a degree from a teaching certificate, you can't teach. But I guess God says differently, and those who try to put you in a box like that to keep volunteers in the community away from helping our kids and stepping up and stepping out without pay is a bad thing? Or maybe it might be better than not doing nothing at all. So, if some people like to twist things, and there's a lot of twisted stuff going on in this campaign, we can get twisted really quick. Smooth operator, one of a kind. I can handle it from the Bible to the boardroom to the classroom to any room. I love it in Jesus' name.
Thank you so much. We have now made it to the closing statements. Each candidate will get 2 minutes for closing statements, and we'll begin with Dr. Kizzy Gibson.
I want to take my couple of minutes to bring you full circle to what I said I wanted to implement in South Carolina. The Certified Student Mentorship Program is very near and dear to my heart. I spoke earlier about my experience as a student mentor, but I did not speak about my experience on the end of being mentored. Growing up in Orangeburg, South Carolina, I had great point of involvement, but I also had great mentors. Starting at Claflin University, Orangeburg Wilkinson, I had great people who implemented, who imparted wisdom to me. And I feel that that's one of the missing elements throughout that quarter of shame and throughout South Carolina as a whole. I want to implement Soft Target No More, which is a school safety initiative. And that too it was birthed from an experience that I had with my son. Last year, he was in a lockdown for almost 2 hours due to two weapons being found on campus. So if I can stop a parent, a grandparent, a pastor, a community member from feeling how I felt that day, I definitely want to implement Soft Target No More. I already spoke about removing CRT, doing everything I can to get rid of it, but to replace it with 1776 and character virtues, which is very important. Financial literacy course, we want to see that implemented before a child can graduate from the state of South Carolina. Home economics, trade, and tech schools being fully funded. Also want to make sure that we are weaning ourselves off the federal dole that's already been spoken of tonight. And finishing the job of removing Common Core. Common Core developed a wedge between the parent and the child, and that's one that we don't want there. And again, I do not support mask mandates or COVID shot mandates. Definitely want parents back in the driving seat. It's not the role of an educator to parent your child. That is your role. Dr. Kizzy Gibson, June 14th, South Carolina Superintendent of Education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brian Chapman.
Thank you very much. As I've walked and talked with different people, I've done a lot of weddings and funerals. And I've had some of my friends who said that they're Democrats because I was nonpartisan till this year. I've been voting for everybody just as I felt led, mostly Republican. So I didn't have to claim till this year. They said, Brian, you know what's going to happen June 29th? They said that we've been waiting and looking for that candidate, the two that don't have the master's degrees. We're going to put them in court in August and September. They're going to have to prove every IEP. They're going to have to prove every homework assignment. They're going to have to prove every term, every assignment, all the payment. The Democrats want this position. Yes, the people have done some smooth words and being great leadership, but these people have asked me, they said, if you're going to get a master's in 6 months, is that a real master's? And they both testified they'll have it by October. 6 months. I have to deal with what the Democrats, I talked with Drew McKissick and over in Florence, and he didn't stay around. They're going to put us in there and they're going to claim that we have systematic racism of those people, and they're ready to attack us from the national level. The local ones here in South Carolina are not going to come after Travis and them. The national group wants to make a big Republican mess because they're going to put them in the Supreme Court and other challenging things, and they want to prove every homework, everything they've done, and they're going to believe white privilege. I hate to be the one telling you, but I know what my Democratic friends have said at the weddings and funerals I've done. I'd rather for us to be aware of this issue coming. I would love to talk with Drew McKissick and others that are involved in this situation. But the biggest educational oversight I've seen is someone being on this for over a year and never understanding the rules from 2019, signed by the governor, sealed, delivered. Be aware or don't be a leader.
Thank you very much. Kathy Maynard.
Thank you, Lucas, and I'm so glad to see Lucas tonight because I saw him when he first started on WIS, so that's been fun to watch. I'm glad to be with you tonight. I am Kathy Manus. I am proud to be qualified for the job of State Superintendent of Education. I have the experience. I'm the education leader prepared on day one to recruit, retain, and reward quality teachers in our classrooms, to improve and reform our education standards, to expand school choice for all, and to empower our parents with true transparency. See, we got to empower our parents, teachers, and principals, and not politicians. We need to expand our faith-based mentoring program. Y'all, COVID did a number on some of our kids, and they need you in our classrooms, mentoring these students. We can't go in there and teach about our love for Christ, but they can see the love of Christ that we have on our face and how we're working with these children. So I hope that we can get our churches together, our faith-based community, to get involved in our schools. We got to fight the waste and abuse and corruption in our schools, strengthen career pathways for our students. I had a person when I first ran for town council to say to me, you always ask for the vote. So I will be honored to have your vote for State Superintendent of Education on June the 14th. Because I am Kathy Manus, and I'm the right person at the right time with the right qualifications and experience to be your next State Superintendent of Education.
Thank you so much. Alan Weaver.
Y'all, I think we need to be very clear about what is at stake in this election. It is literally the future of our country. We need an education leader in South Carolina who understands the stakes, who can articulate the challenges, and then who can build the coalitions in order to get something done. I am that leader because I have been doing that job for the last 9 years at Palmetto Promise Institute. You know, what I found in this political process is that when people can't beat you on policy and they can't beat you on politics, they just try to create confusion over process. So let me say it one more time. I will be fully qualified. I will be glad to show my homework assignments. I can promise you I am working hard, working my tail off, full-time job, full-time candidate, full-time student. So I'm like, Lord, please either expand the hours or shrink the work. One way or another, we're going to get this thing done. But I'm so thrilled to have the opportunity to demonstrate to our students what it does look like to be a lifelong learner and to show them what I have adopted as my life motto. You can either be an American or an Americant. And I'm an American. I want our students to know that they can do anything that they set their mind to. This is the cultural mindset that we have got to change in South Carolina. And that all starts with leadership at the top. Leadership who says, the buck stops here. Not the kind of finger pointing that we have currently in our education system where everything is everybody else's fault, everybody else's problem. No, our state superintendent needs to say, I am the leader of this system and I take full responsibility. Ellen Weaver, I'm asking for your vote on June 14th, and I'm also asking for your help to actually get things done once I'm elected. Thank you.
Travis Betsy.
The Post and Courier, I'm a low country guy, interviewed me, and they said, Travis, why'd you put so much of your own money in the race? I put $250,000 in my own race. I said two things. One, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And two, if you want to see what somebody cares about, show me what they spend their money on. And then she asked a brilliant question. She goes, well, do you know how much the job pays? I go, I'm not doing it for the money. It's baffling to me. So I know I only have 2 minutes, I wish I had more. First of all, I want to thank everyone here because a united Republican Party is how we're going to take our country back. So you have my promise, and I'm asking all the candidates here, whoever wins the primary, that we fully support that person. I say this to everyone, I wish more people would come because this is how democracy is supposed to work. I think you guys would bleed on our flag to keep its stripes red, and I can't thank you enough. You've heard a lot of policy, and we all pretty much agree. No CRT, full parental rights, let's make some change. But what's going to be the difference? I stumbled on my words earlier, and so I'll be more clear about it. If you like what you have gotten, continue to vote for who is here, because it's more of the same. If you want real, substantive change, someone who's going to stand in the void with executive leadership experience and a master's degree by November, I'm the candidate to take that burden on. I'm not looking to build a career in politics. I have a great life in the private sector. I hope I can make some substantive change, push the wheel, and hand it off to another colleague, another Republican conservative. But now is the opportunity to act. And it's in your hands, and I ask for your vote.
Linda Wills.
It really is important to have an education background. You've got to know what's going on in the classroom. You know, coming from the school district in Greenville, our district's 800 square miles. Our buses go 38,000 miles a day. We serve 80,000 meals a day. We have 6,000 teachers. We have 11,000 employees. You know, when teachers got when the legislators say they got $4,000 for a pay increase, well, that did not include the benefits, etc. But it also didn't include the custodial workers. It didn't include all the people who make up the area where these students go to school. You got to look at the big picture. Travis talks about, if you want what you've always had, then we're the ones. Well, he didn't do too bad, did he? And he's a graduate of public school. Public school, public, private, homeschool, public. No. Everybody wants to talk about how bad we are. Let me tell you how great we are. We got to retain and recruit the best teachers. We're getting ready to have a ceremony for teacher cadets. Very involved. Teacher cadets, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a ceremony for those high school students because they know who the best teachers they've had are, and they want to emulate those teachers. So we've got 5 students that we're going to be giving $1,000 to when they go off to college to get them ready. And then I want to do an incentive program for teachers to come back to our state and teach for us. Whether we pay some of their student loans off or give them housing, whatever it may be. But our parents are the voice of our children, and don't ever forget it. They let us know what's going on in those classrooms. Thank you so much. I see you 3, 4, 2.
Thank you so much. One more round of applause again for the candidates. We appreciate it. Politics is not easy. Before we leave tonight, we do want to have a couple of closing words from the president of the Reaganites of York County, Frank Trotta.
Thank you for coming this evening, and I just want to remind everyone we are having a straw poll that will be publicized, so if you gave us your email address when you came in, you'll get an email next week, and we're going to publicize the results of that. The Reaganites of South Carolina is a grassroots political action committee. We urge you to join it. We sponsored tonight's forum jointly with the College Republicans here on the campus of Winthrop University, and we did that because the young people are the future of our country. And it's proper education of these young people that will continue our values in our country. Many are familiar with the quote of President Reagan, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." But he made a more pointed quote, and it was directed at any of you in the audience. It was directed specifically at younger parents, and he said, we've got to do a better job in educating our children. Let me get the quote right. We've got to do a better job in getting across that America is freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of enterprise. And freedom is special and rare. It's fragile. It needs protection.
So to help us do a better job of getting across that message, the Reaganites will be offering full scholarships to any interested college student to the National Youth Leadership School in September. The details are on our website. And while you're on our website, you'll see a tab there that says tip page, and you can report anything going on in your schools that you think is inappropriate, and we'll bring that to the next level. Finally, there's some people we need to thank tonight for the success of our event. First and foremost, the candidates. Thank you for putting yourself out there. And when our Vice President, Dennis Getter, brought the idea up to the Reaganite board back in the winter, Dr. Mark Herring and Garrett Jackson were both members of our board, jumped right in, and together with Dr. Clifford Harris, who's the advisor to the college Republicans on campus, they put this whole thing together. If they'd all stand up and just give them a round. We want to thank the Moms for Liberty for their special assistance with this program. And for doing such a professional job, as he always does, in moderating this. Lucas McFadden, who has to get very early. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. And for one final brief announcement, we have Dr. Mark Herring.
Thank you, Frank. Tomorrow night, there's going to be a fundraiser for Republican candidates who are running in the fall. I hope you'll come. It's at the Glennon Center, 7 o'clock. There'll be a lot of games. We're going to have a silent auction. We have some fabulous things to auction off. So if you want to come, show up at the Glennon Center, 7 o'clock tomorrow night, and help us raise funds for the Republican candidates running in November. Thank you.
I don't need to tell everyone in this room, the primaries, June the 14th. The candidates are going to stick around. They'll be out in the lobby if you've got follow-up questions. And if you can't catch up with them tonight, they're certainly very active on social media. Candidates, good luck. Good luck in the primary. Good luck in November if you make it to that next stage. And we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Have a great and safe time.